The truth is, being strong all the time carries a cost that many people do not see. On the outside, it looks powerful, admirable, even inspiring, but inside, it can feel like carrying a weight that never gets lighter. The person who is always strong becomes the one everyone relies on, the one who never falters, the one who can always be counted upon in times of difficulty. Yet what most people fail to recognize is that this role often comes with an invisible burden. It is not just about showing resilience. It is about constantly pushing down your own pain, your own doubts, and your own fears so that others don't see you crack. And over time, that silent weight begins to grow heavier. Strength without rest becomes exhaustion. It becomes a pattern of ignoring what you need in order to meet the needs of others. You learn to put on a face that says, I can handle this, even when deep inside you are breaking. The expectation, sometimes from others, sometimes from yourself, becomes a cage that leaves little room for vulnerability, because once people get used to seeing you as unshakable, they stop asking if you're okay. They stop offering support because they assume you don't need it. And you learn to live with that silence, even though it hurts. What many don't realize is that the cost of always being strong is not just emotional. It can also be spiritual and physical. Carrying unspoken pain slowly drains joy, creativity, and even the will to connect. You may wake up each day with a smile for the world, but behind closed doors you wrestle with loneliness, exhaustion, and sometimes even a sense of emptiness. You carry responsibilities and expectations like armor, but the armor that protects you also isolates you. People see the strength, but they don't see the cracks that form beneath it. This is the hidden price of always being the strong one. The world applauds the image of resilience, while overlooking the quiet suffering beneath it. And until that burden is acknowledged, it remains a silent weight pressing down, unseen by everyone, but deeply felt by the one who carries it. True strength is not about holding everything together at all costs, but about recognizing that even the strongest need rest, compassion, and moments of softness. When you are always strong, vulnerability becomes something you almost forget how to show. You begin to believe that letting others see your struggles is a sign of weakness. So you hide the moments when your heart feels heavy or when your spirit feels tired. Instead of saying, I'm not okay, you put on the mask of resilience, and over time that mask becomes so convincing that even you start to mistake it for reality. But underneath, the truth is that no one can carry everything alone forever. Suppressing vulnerability may feel like protection, but it slowly eats away at your ability to be fully human. Vulnerability is not just about admitting pain, it's about connection. It is the bridge that allows others to see the real you, to offer comfort, to remind you that you are not alone. When that bridge is closed, you isolate yourself emotionally, even if you are surrounded by people. You may continue to support and encourage others, but deep down, you long for someone to see behind the walls you've built. The cost of never allowing yourself to be vulnerable is that you deny yourself the very intimacy and support that you so freely give to others. It is important to understand that strength and vulnerability are not opposites, they are partners. The courage to admit when you are hurting is not weakness, it is a deeper form of strength. But when you live with the mindset that you must always be strong, you rob yourself of that freedom. You push down tears, silence your fears, and pretend you have it all under control. And in doing so, you miss the healing that comes from simply being seen. The truth is, hiding your vulnerability doesn't make you invincible. It makes you human, living in denial of your humanness. To deny that part of yourself is to deny the softness, the tenderness, and the authenticity that make real relationships possible. You may look strong to the world, but inside you are carrying the quiet ache of never being fully understood. Allowing yourself to be vulnerable is not about falling apart. It is about giving yourself permission to be real. And in that honesty, you open the door to deeper connection, genuine healing, and the kind of strength that doesn't isolate but liberates. When you make strength your constant identity, emotional burnout becomes an inevitable shadow. At first, it feels empowering to carry the weight of every responsibility, to be the one others can always depend on, to face every challenge without hesitation. But the human heart is not a machine. It is not designed to endlessly absorb stress, pain, and struggle without release. When you never give yourself the chance to rest, to fall apart, or to admit you're overwhelmed, the exhaustion begins to accumulate quietly inside you. It shows up in subtle ways: fatigue that doesn't go away, irritability you can't explain, or a sense of emptiness even when you achieve what you set out to do. Emotional burnout is not just about being tired. It is about being drained of the very energy that makes life feel meaningful. It is waking up and realizing you have nothing left to pour into others because you've neglected to refill yourself. When you're always strong for everyone else, you forget that your emotional health matters just as much as theirs. You put yourself at the bottom of the list, and by the time you recognize the cost, it often feels like you have nothing left to give, not to them and not to yourself. This cycle is dangerous because it convinces you to keep going even when your spirit is crying out for rest. You silence that voice because being strong has become your role, your duty, and perhaps even your identity. But the truth is, refusing to acknowledge your limits doesn't make you stronger. It breaks you down slowly, piece by piece. And the tragedy is that by the time burnout hits fully, it leaves you feeling like a stranger to yourself. The way out is not to abandon strength, but to balance it with compassion for yourself. Rest is not weakness, it is preparation. Admitting you are tired does not make you less dependable. It makes you human. You cannot continue to carry others if you are collapsing under the weight of your own silence. Choosing to care for yourself is not selfish. It is the only way to sustain the strength you've been giving so freely. Real strength is not about enduring until you break. It is about knowing when to pause, when to heal, and when to admit that even the strongest need to be held too. When you are always seen as the strong one, it can create an invisible wall of loneliness around you. People begin to assume that you don't need support, that you have everything under control, that you can handle life without ever stumbling. They turn to you for advice, for comfort, for solutions, but rarely do they think to ask how you are really doing. This creates a quiet ache inside because while you are surrounded by others, you may feel profoundly unseen. Strength becomes a mask, and behind it, your pain goes unnoticed. Over time, this isolation deepens. You might start believing that opening up is pointless because no one expects you to be vulnerable. You fear that if you do reveal your struggles, people will be shocked or even disappointed. because they have built an image of you as unshakable. So, instead of risking that, you keep carrying everything alone. And while you may look resilient on the outside, inside you may feel abandoned, as if no one really knows or understands the battles you are fighting. This loneliness is particularly heavy because it comes with contradiction. You are often surrounded by people who admire you, yet you feel as though no one truly sees you. It's not that others don't care, it's that they've grown so used to your strength that they forget you too are human. They forget that even the strongest shoulders eventually ache under too much weight. The danger here is that isolation convinces you to keep your struggles hidden even longer. You tell yourself it's easier to bear them quietly than to risk disappointing others, but in reality, carrying pain in silence only makes it heavier. Healing requires being witnessed, being heard, being understood, and you deserve that just as much as anyone else. Breaking through this isolation means allowing yourself to take off the mask, even with just one trusted person. Vulnerability may feel risky, but it is the doorway to genuine connection. When you let yourself be seen not as the perfect, unbreakable figure, but as the real human you, you create space for true intimacy, true support, and true relief from the loneliness that strength has trapped you in. Because strength without connection is not freedom, it is a prison. When strength becomes your default mode, you often start neglecting the most essential relationship of all, the one you have with yourself. In your constant drive to hold everything together, to meet responsibilities, to be the dependable one, you slowly lose touch with your own inner world. You forget to ask yourself what you need, what you feel, and what truly brings you peace. Instead, your energy is directed outward toward meeting the demands of others, leaving little room for self-reflection or self-care. This self-neglect doesn't always show up immediately. At first, you may feel proud of your ability to handle everything, to keep moving despite the challenges. But underneath, small cracks begin to form. Maybe you stop noticing your own exhaustion until it becomes unbearable. Maybe you ignore the stress in your body until it turns into headaches, tension, or illness. Or maybe you keep dismissing your own desires until you can't even name them anymore. Trying so hard to be strong, you slowly silence your own voice. The most painful part of this pattern is that it disconnects you from your authentic self. You begin to live in service of survival and expectations rather than alignment with who you truly are. Over time, this can leave you feeling hollow, as if you're moving through life but not truly living it. The strength that once felt like a gift now feels like a cage, keeping you from the softness and vulnerability that make life meaningful. So, learning to nurture yourself again is not a betrayal of your strength, it is the foundation of it. Self-care is not indulgence, it is preservation. Listening to your body, honoring your feelings, and giving yourself permission to rest are acts of courage, especially when you've been conditioned to believe that strength means sacrifice. Real power comes from balance, the ability to support others without abandoning yourself. The truth is, you cannot pour endlessly from an empty cup. When you return to yourself, when you allow your own needs to matter, you don't lose strength, you renew it. Because caring for yourself does not make you weaker, it makes you whole. There is a hidden cost to always being strong, the emotional numbness that slowly creeps in when you suppress your vulnerability for too long. At first, it feels like control. You convince yourself that holding everything together without breaking is proof of resilience. You teach yourself not to cry, not to complain, not to show when something hurts. But the more you silence your emotions, the more disconnected you become from them. What was once a coping strategy to survive difficult moments gradually turns into a wall that blocks out joy, tenderness, and genuine connection. Emotional numbness is deceptive. On the surface, it looks like composure, calm, even confidence, but inside it often feels like emptiness. You may notice that things which once excited you no longer spark the same light. Relationships feel distant, not because you don't care, but because you've built barriers so high that even love struggles to reach you. You don't just block out the pain, you also block out the warmth. And this is where the cost of unrelenting strength becomes clear. In protecting yourself from vulnerability, you end up starving yourself of intimacy and fulfillment. Over time, this numbness can feel safer than feeling. After all, to allow emotions back in means facing the grief, fear, and exhaustion you've worked so hard to bury. But avoiding them only prolongs the pain. The body keeps the score. The unexpressed emotions don't disappear. They linger, weighing you down in ways you may not even notice until it becomes unbearable. The way forward is not about abandoning strength, but about redefining it. Strength is not the absence of emotion. It is the courage to feel fully without letting those feelings break you. It is giving yourself permission to cry, to lean on others, to admit when you are hurting. These acts don't weaken you. They restore your humanity. They allow you to reconnect with the parts of yourself you've hidden away. And in doing so, they bring back the depth and richness of life that numbness has stolen. Because true strength is not about being unshakable. It is about being real. And being real means allowing yourself to feel